Do we have any additions to the agenda tonight?
Through Mr. Mayor, we are going to replace 7.2 with a new report that is very similar to the 7.2. We have now finished the service level adjustment review, and so it's just going to be a different report that we're going to present.
Okay. Anybody, anything else? Can I get a motion that we accept the agenda as amended?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, my apologies. Because we have a delegation, and the delegation is here to speak to something I believe that the public is very interested in, we're going to be requesting that we allow the delegation to speak first, and then go into a short closed session with the delegation, and then we'll reopen and then start talking about budget, because I think the budget discussion might take some time. So out of respect for the public and our delegation, we would like to change the order of the agenda.
Okay, so we'll move 8.1 up to before 6, right after 5 then? Or want to move right up that far?
If council likes to, yeah, that'd be after the minutes, yeah, that would work well for us.
Okay. Okay, on that amendment, can I get a motion that we amend the agendas, to accept the agenda as amended?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Any questions? All those in favor? So carried. 6.0, adoption of the minutes from February 10th, 2028. Any arrows or omissions in that? Can I get a motion that we accept the minutes as presented? Councillor Longstaff?
I'll make that motion.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So carried. Okay, delegation time. Who do you like to go first?
Through Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm very pleased to welcome two delegations this evening to talk to you about forensic auditing and investigations. And so we have a delegate here from Brownlee Fried, and we have a delegate from MNP LP. They're both experts in their fields, and I'm very excited to have them here tonight to talk about the realities of forensic auditing and investigations, working with the RCMP. And so with that, I'd like to welcome our delegation to the front, and they can present.
Use the mic, I assume, just.
Yep, there you go.
Perfect.
One touch and away you go.
All right. Excellent. Mr. Mayor, Councilors, thank you very much for having us out. My name is Derek King. I'm a partner with Brownlee LLP. We are legal counsel to municipalities. I lead, I'm one of the senior lawyers in our firm. I lead a practice that includes dealing with financial impropriety, financial concerns, fraud, and misappropriation of funds and things like that, amongst other things. As a consequence, I work very regularly with forensic auditors like my colleague here from MNP, Graham Quast, and I'll let him introduce himself and some of his background.
Sure, thank you. Well, good evening. My name is Graham Quast. I'm a partner in forensics and litigation support at MNP. And my role is not to advocate for any individual or outcome, but to help organizations understand how investigative processes work, what it realistically takes to get reliable answers. And I want to set expectations at the onset. As we're in an open public forum, we can't discuss matter-specific allegations, but individuals or privileged communications. But what we can do tonight is explain at a general level how investigations typically proceed, what evidence is required, why timelines and costs can vary, and why involvement by law enforcement such as the RCMP is not automatic. So I understand there's significant concern in the community, and my goal tonight is to provide clarity about process and expectations, not conclusions, as reliable answers ultimately will come from disciplined, evidence-based work, and that's what I'm going to focus on explaining to you.
And since that covers a whole bunch of the precursor I was going to say as well, I'll leave it at that. So, my understanding of why we've been having here, as my colleague has indicated, is to be available to council and to of course the general public who are very interested in this, to talk about this, the process and what typically happens in these kinds of situations. I can either sort of begin to explain that, or frankly I can allow council, if you'd like, to set the stage for the questions that we have. It's really your call on how you want to proceed.
I think perhaps you can continue on, and then should any questions come up that we might have that might come to light.
Certainly. So, one of the, typically, when I get involved, well, usually it's early. Thankfully, most often, if we're lucky, it's early. And usually there's either public concern about matters that they've seen, numbers that don't seem to add up, or council itself or administration have come in and have noted changes. Sometimes it'll be by way of a whistleblower complaint, things like that. And sometimes there will even be fairly compelling information to suggest, well, there's definitely something to do with that. But in all circumstances, we have to proceed cautiously. And one of the first things that we're always required to do is set proper expectations as to what will happen. Because the problem is, we all kind of, our first exposure to any of this, our first exposure to any of this, Mr. Mayor, is television and media. So we're given an impression as to who we go to solve these problems. Or is it typically the expectation is, we think we see something, we have our suspicion, we've had a whistleblower complaint, we go to our local police, the RCMP, or if we have a municipal police force, we lodge a complaint, we demand an investigation, they investigate, and sometime at minute 45 of the 1 hour TV show, they're in court dealing with preliminary appearances and things like that. And of course, unfortunately, that's just not how it happens. And so part of what we're here today is talk a little bit about how it practically does occur. So typically by the time we've been contacted, there's something there that is worth looking at. We will then strategize on how that needs to be addressed. We will get a forensic auditor, typically M&P, because we work with them enough, we have a lot of trust in the work that they do. We'll get them involved early, at least in sort of having a plan for how we approach this. From there, then we have to set expectations. And what we'll do is we'll meet with council or administration and talk a little bit about the process, which is kind of what we're talking about here right now. And the first thing that I will say is, we will not be able to have the RCMP just simply run an investigation for us. This is the first thing I have to explain to people is, we can make that complaint. We can say, well, we have our suspicions, and the RCMP will say, typically, great. When you have the evidence, come to us. And the reason for that is not because they're not interested. It's a simple matter of personnel available to them, prioritizations, budgetary constraints, and they set their own agenda on what they need to deal with. And unfortunately, it's not often the case. Oh, there we go. It's frankly just not often the case that this matter will be of such a major importance, at least when they foresee it, that they will simply jump on it and put a bunch of resources into it. Typically, where the police get involved is when we deliver to them the forensic audit. We've packaged up the evidence that we have. If that evidence in the forensic audit demonstrates that we have more than simply something that we would fire our staff members for, but actually have misappropriation, some sort of fraud or mismanagement that results in a criminal issue, we will deliver that, explain in summary form what it is, and ask the police if they will move forward with it. And even there, they may not actually proceed with charges. Because again, they have their own priorities, they have their own budgets and constraints, and frankly, sometimes they simply cannot deal with it. So that's really the starting point on the criminal side of anything where we think there might be criminal is, this may not ultimately result in charges, even if there may be evidence for that. That of course doesn't mean there's no other solution available to the municipality, and that might be by way of civil claim. If we've got evidence that there has been fraud, misappropriation of some kind, and we have a quantification of what a loss is, then we at least now have a point where we can start taking that civil approach, where we can bring an action in the court of King's Bench, file a suit against the responsible parties that we've identified, and then follow that process. But of course, that takes time as well. So once we've gotten to that point, we still might be looking at a couple of years before we have a resolution of that matter. And I can say that most of those don't ultimately resolve in court. Very few things actually go to trial. Typically what will end up happening is you'll go through a process of discovery, investigation of the evidence, testing of the evidence, and people's defenses to that, and inevitably get to a point where some compromise might be worked out. If the evidence is not great or if it's overwhelming, you might end up, frankly, with a consent judgment or something like that, where the person will acknowledge the guilt and where you will agree to some schedule of compensation in return. But of course, that only works if the people you're going after still have the money, which is another factor that we run into. Which a lot of the time when we see financial impropriety in an organization, that money is being put to a direct purpose as fast as it's being drawn out, and sometimes that money is not traceable. We can't pull it out of all the many things it's gone into. So these are some of the challenges that we face. Where all of this goes, though, is that the process requires time. There's no magic bullet that we can utilize to simply get the process going, put somebody else in charge of it, and make it happen. So we know that we need legal counsel involved. We know that we need a forensic audit to start right away. And of course, what that means is we need the finances to pursue that forensic audit. And I'll let my colleague talk a little bit about their processes and the potential costs that are involved in that. But unfortunately, it is a requirement. If in this case, the town of Gibbons wants to move forward, either potentially with criminal charges if there is evidence to support it, or with seeking a civil remedy if there's evidence to support that, we need the foundation of that forensic audit to determine whether we have an actual claim and to determine what the actual loss is. So I know that nobody here in this room is happy to have just heard that. I apologize for that, but I don't want to give anybody a misconception as to how this process unfolds. So I'm going to pause there. I've probably given you a lot to think about right off the bat. I'm going to invite Graham to talk a little bit about what M&P and forensic auditors can do and how they do it, and give a sense of timing, process, and cost on that. And then I think we can pause at that point.
Yeah. Maybe just before we jump off, so basically time, and then of course the cost, without even getting into the forensic audit as well, just the legal costs and the sheer amount of time to get it from the start to the finish. There's a huge amount of time involved in that, unless the evidence is slapped you in the face, so to speak, right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, to answer your question, there's a phrase that lawyers always try to avoid but inevitably have to say every time we give advice in that. To answer the question, the answer is kind of it depends. And I often make the joke that I can practice law with two sides, one that just says no, the other one says, well, it depends. And unfortunately, the answer to this is it depends. So if there's impropriety and it's easy to find, then subject to what Graham's comments will be, we might get through a process fairly quickly and come to a conclusion relatively quickly and be able to action that quickly, very quickly. But if in some of the cases, for example, that we've dealt with where we have people who are very adept at hiding their impropriety, partly because of the job they had or because of the skills they have as, say, a con artist or what have you. And again, this is all generic. I'm not talking about anything specific to any incident that involves Gibbons, but if they're very good at it, then it can be hard to pull that evidence. Doesn't mean we can't find it, but the process may be longer. On the cost side, it tends to be that the legal costs don't tend to be huge at the beginning because it's about guiding, it's ensuring that the preliminary advice has been given, that the forensic auditor has been given their mandate, what we're looking for, and kind of put in motion, touching base periodically with them, advising our clients as we go forward as they do their process. So the cost tends to be more on the audit side at that point. It shifts more to a legal cost once we have that report, and now we have to digest it, determine what we have, give legal advice to our client, and say, here's the options you have moving forward. That's where the costs will sort of tip the other way a little bit. But it's almost impossible to give you a definitive timeline until you really know where you're looking for that.
No problem. So I can speak to our process and what an investigation looks like when you do something like this, which will also tie into comments I have about cost and potential cost and the timelines it might take to do something like this. So step one in such a process for us is always going to be to establish the scope of the work that we're doing and really the questions that we need to set out to answer for you. It's very important in the work that we do that we enter into it effectively with a hypothesis of what might have happened or what's suspected to be going on so that we can be very focused and targeted. We don't want to be doing a search for a needle in a haystack or being on a witch hunt. That gets expensive very quickly, and it's actually not really consistent with the standards we have to follow. So we should know what we're trying to prove or disprove. And then step two is record preservation. So making sure that the facts, the documents, the information we would need to do that work is being secured, whether it's through any sort of document holds or process to actually obtain that information to ensure that we're not on shifting sand and we actually have a basis to start analyzing. And so step three then becomes a triage and preliminary review process where we take those records and we do the highest value look we can given that hypothesis to say, hey, is there anything happening here that is smoke, that might suggest there's fire or that might indicate it makes sense and there'll be value to doing more focused procedures or a deep dive. And if we have authorization to go ahead and do that, we complete the analysis and then end with reporting. And we would do that reporting in the form ultimately directed is usually in a report form unless, of course, there was nothing that anybody cares to discuss and we would know that ahead of time. And so as I talk about cost, I really talk about drivers of cost because it is impossible at this stage to say here's a range of the total cost just because we don't know what we're dealing with. It's really driven by the volume and complexity of records, what information is available, how easy is it to analyze. Now we have a lot of abilities to take information in any format, get it into something we can analyze, but sometimes that work can take some time depending on its state. And of course it's also driven by urgency and the cooperation and access to information we have. So my usual recommendation is to view it as a staged process, kind of along those steps. So the bus stops at these stops and you can get off if you want to. But that's generally how I would frame it and go from there. So if we had a stage where it was that preliminary look, acquire the documents and do the triage, then you have an opportunity for much lower fees overall to assess if it makes sense to do a full investigation. And timeline's really similar to the cost issue. Don't know how long it would take. I mean, I think we would, if we started right away and it came to that, we would go after preserving those records immediately within the first week or two. And I'd expect kind of that triage and preliminary review stage to take a number of weeks. And from there, we'd have to look at what we're dealing with best to make kind of full time to completion. Any questions?
Throughout the process of the forensic audit, is there ever a point or possibly a point where you say to the client, you're barking up a tree that's not there? Rather than continue to search to try to find something?
We would approach that topic carefully. We wouldn't say there's nothing there unless we've actually looked at 100% of everything just because of the potential. But we would say we're not seeing anything and articulate what it is we've done, give you an idea of, say, for example, how much of a population of transactions have we looked at to say in those we found nothing. But we would keep the town informed and council informed of the progress, what we're seeing, not seeing as we go. It's a lot of communication in the process, so you don't feel like you say, all right, go, and then you get a report at the end and it says, hey, we found nothing, and the invoice comes for the full cost. We make sure we can make decisions as we go.
And just to add to that, of course, and that becomes the job of legal counsel too, is to take a look at what the forensic auditors are telling you at those critical points, and then to provide that cost-benefit analysis of saying, look, here's where we are so far, here's the likelihood and potential costs of pursuing forward versus the potential outcome at the end of this. Are we potentially throwing good tax dollars after bad tax dollars, and is that a wise use? So that counsel can then weigh all of that evidence and make a determination as to what's in the best interest of the community from that point forward. And yeah, certainly there have been situations where the decision was ultimately made that the cost of pursuing the possibility that we may find something greatly exceeds what we're likely to find, and that's just not a good use of tax dollars. But so our job is to help guide council through that decision making, but ultimately it's you folks that have to make that determination.
And maybe, I'm not sure if you can answer, from your experience, now, I'm sure you guys are aware that we've asked municipal affairs for forensic audit. What do you think the odds are that they're gonna do one for us? Sorry to put you on.
It's impossible to answer that question. Is there potential they could? Sure, absolutely, but the challenges are exactly the same as what I described in the RSMPs. They also have, they're dealing with 400 municipalities and a lot of different priorities and challenges, and it's, again, what do we have resources? What's the budgetary constraints we have? What's the prioritization of these things? So I think it's excellent you've asked. There's literally no harm in going to them and explaining that. I think, you as a council, if you're expressing the public's concern and how that's driving these things and how much of a priority it is for the community, then I think you got a good chance of trying to raise that as a serious issue for them. But they'll ultimately have to make their own determination, and it's, I can't tell you all the different factors that they'll be looking at to make a determination on whether they're going to put the effort in on this. And if they do, likely they're just calling in MP and they're the ones paying for it rather than close. To be honest, if they're not going to do it internally, they'll go to the subject matter experts externally as well.
Go ahead, you have a question?
Can you, for our community, quantify, particularly a little bit more first on the MNP side and then on the Brownlee side, so the indication was we would do an assessment, we would review your documentation, that initial assessment would probably take somewhere in the vicinity of a couple of weeks to review. Quantify what a couple of weeks of a review costs on the MNP side, and then for your time. So just let's put 1 month of work together in a dollar amount for us.
Yes, that is difficult to do because of course we're, yeah, I am.
Say it again.
I said I am guilty. We juggle a lot of engagements at one time, so we never are putting 100% of kind of our bench strength into one matter, so I can't just take the number of hours in a month and kind of multiply it out. But I would say it's best approached with almost guardrails or limits, right? And trying to estimate what that would be and saying don't go over that. But I would say that first few weeks, if you're able to obtain, if we're able to obtain all the documentation and get a preliminary review, probably be in the 10 to 20,000 range to get a preliminary review done and report back on what we see.
Just to answer Councilor Morrison's question, that's the portion where our costs tend to be a little bit lower because once we've sort of worked with council and MP to get the ball rolling, we are still involved. There's some overlap in that process where we're touching bases, communication, clarification, those kinds of things. But for the first portion, we don't tend to incur a lot of costs for the client until we have some preliminary information back from MP that we need to assess and consider. So I would say, and I tend, when I make these estimates, I tend to be very conservative. I'd rather tell you it's going to cost more and deliver less than the other way around. So if they're saying 10 to 20, then I would say in that first few weeks period, I would be surprised if the total cost exceeded, say, 7 to 15. That would be the range in there you would expect at that time. And part of what we do, of course, too, is it's not all done by the senior people. We use our bench strength because there's people who can do work for us on these files that are lower priced, frankly, than the senior guys. So we try to leverage that as well to keep costs under control. We know we work for municipalities, right? So I think that's a fair range.
So what I'm hearing is upwards of $20,000 on the MNP side for that initial, and probably somewhere in the vicinity of, my apologies, Buffy. What I'm hearing, I'm in trouble. What I'm hearing is just a grosso modo number, we're saying $20,000 just for that initial review on the M&P side. We're talking probably another 10 to 15.
Probably 10 is a pretty good number.
Fair. So we're talking the first month we're at $30,000, and we're just having a cursory review at this point in time. I'm being realistic, in all honesty, and I'm being realistic for a reason.
Councillor St. Germain?
I'm just wondering if there is like a statute of limitations on doing this audit, considering that there's been staff that have left as well as a brand new mayor and council.
So, Mr. to answer Mr. Germain's question, limitations are certainly something that we are always very much aware of. Typically, the limitation period is 2 years, but it runs from certain key factors. So your limitation is based on a principle called discoverability. So your limitation runs from the point where you know that you've suffered a harm or a loss. You know what that loss was, and then you know who you're going to hold responsible for that. So right now, if in these circumstances there's financial concerns, but we don't know if they're legitimate yet or not. There's just concerns, and it's certainly worth looking at. It sounds like, but we don't have the evidence to demonstrate that yes, indeed, there's been some misappropriation or some other actionable loss, and we don't know that we can definitively hold certain people accountable for that. Once all those pieces are in place, your limitation will run. So, and then a corollary with that is also reasonableness. So you can't just go and be willfully blind to this information for a few years and then decide, okay, now we'll look. What the tests are for the court is when would a reasonable person, in this case, when would a reasonable administration or council have this information in front of it? Right now, as you move forward, I think you're being reasonable, and so if there's a point in time here in the next little while you make a determination to investigate, the period of time that the limitation will start on will probably be when we have that report, or at least enough information in our hands, say at some stage, these various guardrails that MNP has put in place where we can say, okay, we definitely have a loss here. That once we have that, and we know who's responsible for it, that's when our time period will start. So you've got time still.
Councillor Brack?
Kind of to follow up with Councillor St. Germain's question, and you had said that I guess you would have to have, as far as timeframes go, and it would depending on when the action would be and on who would do it. But let's say if a former council and a former administration had already been aware of the information and they hadn't proceeded or did anything about it, does that, with new council being, I guess, responsible trying to look into it, is there any time frame that lapses?
So that's a good question, and I think the answer kind of goes back into what we were talking about. It talks about really when would the limitation start. And again, this is purely hypothetical because, as you know, we have not looked into any of this. So I don't want to give anybody the impression that I'm speaking to specific facts, as I don't have them. But let's make the assumption that there was a prior council that had sufficient information. And again, it's not. Let me take a step back, because when we're trying to figure out who should know, we're talking, it's the municipality. And the municipality acts through two bodies. It's council, but it's also administration. So we would look at both circumstances. When did the legislative body know, or alternatively, when did the administration know? And when we look at that knowledge is not going to be the potential wrongdoer's knowledge. So it's not that, oh, well, somebody in administration knew all this because they did it. That's not part of the test. It's what would a reasonable administration or a municipal municipality know. So that's kind of the framework on that. But yes, if the evidence was such that it came out that all those requisite pieces were in place a few years ago, that there was knowledge, knew it was wrongdoing, knew that it was actionable, and knew who to hold responsible for it, that might be a defense that would be raised. It wouldn't prevent us from necessarily bringing an action, but it could arise as a defense, saying, well, that knowledge has been more than 2 years, and you're out of time. And if that could be demonstrated, yes, that would be a complete defense to the action. There would be no recoverability of that.
And then could you explain to us exactly if it was a civil lawsuit was to be done, exactly how would that work?
Sure.
And I guess the question is, there's that saying, you can't get blood from a stone. What is the time frame of, let's say, someone moving around properties, changing their names, changing titles over? Can you lien houses? Can you, all of that, to what degree and time frame?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, but I'll do my best on it. Okay, so the process-wise, so let's assume that MNP has delivered a report. It identifies wrongdoing. We know who's responsible for it. We have a value on that. Where do we go from there? Once we have instructions from our client, is we will file a claim. Those claims can be drafted fairly quickly once you have that information. In fact, a lot of the time when we are pretty sure what that final report is going to say, and we're pretty confident that we're going to get those instructions, or we've already got the instructions, we'll be drafting that before the final report is even done. So we'll have the framework on that statement claim drafted up. So, but let's just say we haven't done that. The report drops, we analyze it, we give advice to our clients, there's some discussion, the decision is set that let's go after these individuals. You can have that statement of claim properly drafted and filed with the court in 2 weeks. You can do it faster depending on the scope of what has to be in there, but I'd say 14 days is a pretty reasonable number to use. And then we file it. Now, then we've got some options. So sometimes we will file things and not serve them so that we can then perhaps reach out to the individuals responsible and say, here's what's coming. Are you going to make us do this? Or can we sit in a room and talk about how you're going to make amends? So we may have an option. We have a year after we file a claim in which to serve it. So a lot of the time we file it and we serve it, but sometimes strategically we will not necessarily serve that claim at that time. But 2 weeks to file the claim. We allow a bit of time to serve it. Sometimes we have to chase individuals, those kinds of things. But we get service on that. That triggers the process. There will be a period of time in which they have to deliver a defense. And then from there, there's a process that unfolds. Discoveries is the first portion of that, which is an exchange of what records do you have, this is what we have. From there we go into typically questioning on the evidence. You explore the information, you question witnesses, and those kinds of things. Now it sounds quick, but you're probably talking on the fastest type of case, probably a year to go through that process. On more complicated matters, this is where we get into some of the caveats that you gave me on this is, okay, well, if we can't track the person down because they changed names, we may have to investigate for a while. We may have to hire people who specialize in tracing name changes and things like that. Or if we know what their name, but they haven't changed their name, but we don't know where they are, we may, sorry, please go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean like name change. What I mean is that you transfer your possessions. Let's say if you have your house and you transfer it over someone else's name because you have a feeling that something might be coming your way. That's the question that I'm looking.
That never happens, of course. So,
No.
Okay, so I appreciate the clarification on that. So process-wise, that's how these things unfold. So we go through questioning. There will almost always be at some point court-mandated dispute resolution where we sit in a room and see if we can hash it out. Once that's done, and typically if that doesn't resolve the issue, then we set a trial. And then to set a trial, we basically have to explain to the court, we're ready for trial, both sides are ready, everything's done, and then we wait for them to give us a trial date. And that trial date is entirely dependent on where you are bringing the action. This would be Edmonton. Anything here would be filed in Edmonton. The case would be in Edmonton. It might take a year to get a trial date. So that's kind of the process. Now again, as I said, most things don't go to trial. Usually what ends up happening is you get to a certain point where you can look at both sides and say, okay, well, here's the strength of our case. There's the weakness of your case and vice versa. Do we have some risk? Well, yeah. Is that worth shaving 20% off what we're seeking? Maybe. You get into these discussions about what's the value of pursuing this. For example, if we've lost $500,000, we might be able to get $280,000 back. And maybe, do we want to settle on that or not? We look at it and say, well, what's it going to cost us to go to court? Do we want to put a bunch of money into lawyers and consultants to keep pursuing this? It's still probably only end up with $300. Is it worth it, or do we settle at $280? So those are the kind of conversations that will often happen when we get to that point. Timing wise though is entirely dependent on how the facts unfold, challenges in service, and locking things down, and how hard they decide fights. Those are very hard to predict. Let's assume though that we have a judgment, and this goes to the rest of your question. We end up, frankly, we get a settlement, and they acknowledge they owe us money, and we've now got an actionable debt, or we do go to trial and we get a conviction in favor, we get a, not a conviction, but a judgment, pardon me, in favor of the municipality, and now that's a debt that we can action. From that point forward, then we are now in the recovery provisions, and there's certain things we can require of our debtors. We can require them to disclose their assets. We can require them to give us access to financial records and those kinds of things, so that we can start to trace assets. And that process can be involved. But there's usually a fair amount of success in chasing those things. So if somebody has transferred assets to their kids, or paid off debts that shouldn't have been paid, because they were given the wrong priority to debtors and stuff like that, those often can be undone or at least traced. But again, all of that is very fact driven. So I can't say to you today, oh, this would be the process we would follow. It's going to entirely depend upon what steps the debtor has taken to hide their assets or divest themselves of them. I'm dealing with one right now, or my colleagues are dealing with one right now, I just say, where the individual had a lot of assets like motorcycles and cars, and they all disappeared. And they're slowly now going up for auction, and his friends are selling them off as if they own them. That can be undone. You can look for that kind of information, trace it back, and prove that he's handled his assets properly, and there may be some recovery there. So it's a very roundabout way of saying, again, it kind of depends, but there are tools. But none of those work if the person has no money. If they haven't hidden their assets, they just don't have any. And unfortunately, for a lot of people who take money from municipalities, they're taking it for gambling. They're taking it because they're trying to keep their business afloat. They're propping up parents, aging parents. There's all sorts of things that drive it, but that money comes in and it goes out as fast. And those can be more challenging, quite frankly, to trace. And the final point I'll make on this is, you're right, you can't get blood from a stone, but sometimes we bring these actions because even though we can't get blood from a stone, we can make the stone's life miserable from this point forward. Again, I'm not advocating that that's necessarily what you want to do, but I have a number of judgments that have been placed for a very long time against people who mishandle funds, who literally cannot get out from under that debt. Every time they have any money, it's garnished. They want to work, but they can't get bonded. They want the judgment lifted because they cannot borrow money, they cannot mortgage a house. They're basically financially ruined, and sometimes that's the only constant. That's really the result that we get, and we have to sometimes live with that. And I can tell you, I know in other municipalities, councils are very happy that that's what they have in place, and it will be there forever. There's been, what, 6 councils since that happened, and they all keep telling me the same thing. Leave it in place. We're not getting the money back, but they're not getting away with it. So there's sometimes that as well.
In regards to forensic audit, you're talking that you need to find information, but if there's information missing, let's say there's a gap of, we'll say, just to make up a number, $5 million that you just can't track. How does that affect the forensic audit, or do you get to fill in the gaps? Is there a certain criteria? What's the end result of, well, it's just not there, so we can't proceed, or is there other avenues to take?
Yeah, if we're talking about money, in a bank balance somewhere, or it's gone through a bank account, then we're going to have records available to see where funds went out and at least see it as a transaction. So there shouldn't be any, you had $5 million in an account and now it's gone, but we can't say anything about what happened to it. That may be different if you're talking about assets that can grow legs or something else, or something that's off the books. But certainly when we're talking about currency that's gone through accounts, we will be able to say something about where all of those funds ultimately went or where they sit now. But if it is the case that given the available information, we can't determine ultimately the recipient or the use of it or where it sits now, we've exhausted all of our ability to kind of pull on that thread, then we would simply provide you with that conclusion that it's uncertain, we don't know where these funds went or what's happened with them, but this is where we lost the trail. Okay, so for example, if it's some nondescript transaction on a bank statement for $100,000 gets transferred out, and there's nothing on that statement to help you out, then it's going to the financial institution and specifically saying the account number and the account holder that received this transfer. They will have that information. If it's within 7 years. If it's older than that, then there's really no source for it. Does that answer your question?
And just to check a bit more, and I was like, call you at Marina Junction down, and I talked about the chasing of information and assets and things like that after you have a judgment. There are some tools that potentially can be used even beforehand to try to trace information. So a Marina Injunction allows you to basically freeze assets, seize and freeze basically before you have your judgment. But it's a very hard case to make, but it is a tool that is out there. Sometimes those get used. There's things like Anton Pillar orders, which allow us to go in and seize documents and records and information in a claim. There's also a tool called Norwich order, which allows us to go to third parties that are not part of the litigation and seek information that only they have. For example, going to banks and saying, we need access to these accounts. They're all very challenging tools to use. They require court applications, and of course, equals money, unfortunately. So there are some tools that can be used there. And of course, we always try to build those cost recovery into the ultimate judgments that we get, but they do add extra steps. But in the case of a Norwich order, for example, we could potentially go to a bank and say, we don't know, sorry, just to take a step back, when we're using a Norwich order, we may not even have filed our claim yet. We have enough information we feel to demonstrate there probably is a wrongdoing, but we need this additional information from the third party to confirm who our wrongdoer is or that there is a wrongdoing. It looks a little bit like a fishing expedition, and one thing the courts don't let you do is fish. So you have to have very compelling evidence to meet the test, and I won't go into the details of the test today, but if you can demonstrate that you've met the test, then you may be able to get banking records or other third-party records that help you trace the wrongdoing and identify the responsible party. They've been used for things like demonstrating that kickbacks were definitely being received in relation to certain transactions and things like that, for example.
The thing is, they're all ex parte, right? So the other side isn't necessarily informed.
Sorry, and that's a very good point.
Without their knowledge.
Yeah, so ex parte means without the other
Okay,
party.
you bet. We'll take one more.
So say we went through this process and there was a judgment given, could we then utilize any of our insurance director's insurance, fidelity insurance, or is that us done?
I apologize, but that's not really a question I can answer. There's a couple reasons for that. One, I haven't looked at the policies, and two, we also act for the insurer. So we have to be very careful not to give anything that might remotely look like a coverage opinion. We'll go to somebody else for that anyways, not us. All I can tell you is that you may find that there is evidence to demonstrate, or sorry, that the facts are such, I should say, that there's something in your policy that could be triggered. But that's really a question for your advisors at Alberta Municipalities or whoever your insurance is through. So yes, has insurance kicked in another files? Yes, absolutely. It's very fact specific. That's a question that you would need to entertain with your insurance advisors and get that advice from them, unfortunately.
Mr. Duhamel, you had mentioned some of what you want to do in the closed session?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, and again, out of respect for our public, we want to keep the closed session somewhat short, but there's some advice that is required in closed session from the consultants that we have here today from our delegation. So we'd like to move to closed session for a short recess.
Okay, can I get a motion that we go into closed session?
I'll motion that, Ocean.
All those in favor? Okay, folks, we're going into closed session for a short time, hopefully not more than 15 minutes. That sound about right? Maybe more?
Might be a little bit more. I'd probably say at most, we might need maybe 20 minutes, half hour, but again, what we're hoping is, again, it's just general advice to council. So,
Yeah, okay.
But we'll try and keep it shorter if we can.
Okay, so, I mean, you guys, we need to get you guys to step out for 20 minutes or so?
Sorry about that.
Can I get a motion to return to open session?
I'll make that motion.
All those in favor? So carried. And before we get into finance, could I get a motion that we accept the Brownlee and MNP meeting as information?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Presentations or whatever. Yeah, that's what I knew I heard it. All those in favor? So carried. Okay, 7.1, accounts paid as of February the 20th, 2026.
If there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Any questions? Any questions, Councillor Longstaff?
Just out of curiosity, first page, the third thing down, it says West End Seniors Activity Center. Where is the West End Seniors Activity Center? And the description kind of cut off, it just says reimbursement of new HOR.
I can answer that. So the grant funding that was provided to us for service that we were looking to provide, we weren't able to fill the position or provide the facilitator, so we were required to refund the grant. So that's the refund of the grant going back to the grant provider.
Thank you.
Anything else? Seeing none, can I get a motion to accept that 20 accounts paid as of February 20th as information? Ms. Morrison?
I move that we accept accounts paid as information.
All those in favor? So carried. 7.2, Mr. Duhamel.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. This evening we are here to present the first meeting in relationship to the budget. We have an RFD here that talks about basically service level adjustments, and what we need basically from council this evening is general direction in relationship to a number of service level adjustments that we are looking at considering. Now, I've created a bit of a presentation, and I wanted to do this so that the public could see what we're presenting and what we wanted to do here. So, Buffy, if you could move to the next slide, please. So, the purpose of tonight is to basically look at a number of service level adjustments that would allow us to get to what we would consider a balanced budget. Now, as everybody is aware, we have a significant financial situation in the town of Gibbons, and we've done a lot of work. And I wanted to actually also say before I begin, we have a guest tonight, Harold Johnsrud, who is the official administrator. I want to give him credit for supporting us through this process. We've had a lot of conversations, and the culmination of tonight's work is in part the work that we've done in collaboration with the province and the additional administrator. And so the purpose of tonight's review is to talk about the restoring of our structural balance. And Jody gave me heck earlier because she said, what is a structural balance? Essentially getting us back to what we consider a balanced budget. We're looking at what would it take to stabilize our operations and align our service levels with fiscal capacity. And as we've mentioned on numerous occasions now, we have not basically had what we call a balanced situation in relationship to service costs and our revenues. And we talked at length about the situation that got us to this point. And tonight we're going to talk about the solutions that we could employ to get us back to a balanced budget situation. Next slide, Buffy. So one of the key things that we uncovered as we began looking at the budget is that we really didn't have a balanced budget. And it's very important to note that under the Municipal Government Act, you must have a balanced operating budget and a balanced capital budget annually. And this means that your revenues must be equivalent to your expenditures. And when we began our review, what we found is that your budget actually wasn't balanced. It had a budget deficit of approximately $2.55 million. And that was due in the most part, due to erroneous, in our opinion, erroneous revenues that were not receivable in nature. And this caused us, again, what we call a structural imbalance, basically a deficit budget. It's probably been like this for a number of years, as we mentioned before, and this is why we've kind of slowly over years been running out of cash. And so when we began basically the budget review, we were sitting at basically, again, that $2.5 million shortfall, essentially a 66% tax dollar increase. And as you're aware, we've shared this information with council before, and we are very aware, again, from the direction that we've received from you thus far, that's not an option. And so I give all the credit to Ryan, if he wants to speak to this a little bit. We went into an exercise of what we call base adjustments. We did a complete review of all of your budgets line by line, and we looked at areas where we thought we could make essentially corrections, remove the erroneous revenues, but also look at reductions in terms of what we figured or thought were expenditures that were overinflated, questionable, what we would consider not conventional for a municipality. And so Ryan made a number of adjustments. Ryan, would you speak to that?
Yeah, so I think I'm on my fourth run through now of the budget in its entirety across all the departments. So first run through, we went through, identified any erroneous revenue items, reserve transfers that weren't occurring, anything like that. So I took that off the top first. Second wave going through was to review for items that were easy, just eliminations, for lack of a better term. So second coast through was to go through that, identify any items, at the same time identify service level reduction items that I can't make changes to, but we can propose as options for council. So that was step 2, and then step 3, Tim and I actually together went through the rest of it and made whatever changes we felt we were comfortable for and tracked all those changes, and then further built out further scenarios. So across all of it, there's been a wide swath of changes. One of the big adjustments, I guess I would say, to the budget that we've included, because it's something that's going to happen, but we obviously still need to work through the paperwork and get council approval, is the Loans to Local Authorities group has actually come to the table with us and provided options and opportunities for refinancing of specific debentures, which is just going to give us the ability to further balance the budget accordingly. So all credit to them and the province for coming to the table on this one, and something I'm in the works on. I didn't have it available for this. I actually didn't even know if I was going to make it tonight, so I didn't have it available for this meeting, but at the next council meeting I'll have a RFD to council for the options and our recommendation for the refinance and structuring of the Loans to Local Authorities debentures, and that'll be something that's included in the budget as well.
Thanks, Ryan. So with the work that Ryan completed, and again, as he mentioned before, we've been through this about 4 or 5 times through the budget, like combing it for things that we consider errors and adjustments that we can make. It's very important to note that those adjustments don't necessarily include what we consider service level reductions that need council approval. There's a certain, basically practice in municipal government that service levels are basically the authority of council. And so we can't make those adjustments without your, basically your okay. And so we were able to make the adjustments that we felt we could create without creating significant service level changes and basically corrections to the budget. So with that, again, a 1% tax increase, it's very important for the public to know, is that it's about $37,844. And we are currently, with the corrections that Ryan and I made, basically at a budget of $1.01 million, which would be a 26% tax dollar increase. I have to say that, again, we heard very loud and clear from this council that that would not be acceptable, that we have to sharpen our pencils, we have to take a look at this budget, and we have to make a number of maybe difficult choices that would result in what we consider a realistic and fair budget for the residents of the town of Gibbons. Buffy, next slide, please. So with that, again, we went through and we identified total annual reductions of approximately $1.7 million. And so as you saw, there's a 20% tax dollar increase on the board, but we have found what we consider optional reductions that we could conduct within this budget of approximately 45%, which means that we could get to a budget position of, again, a positive situation from a cash flow perspective. That would result in approximately a 19% tax dollar decrease. Now, that isn't what we'd be looking for. I will explain that in a few moments. We also have one-time dollars, and again, this was because of the support that we received from the province. A $500,000 ACP grant has not been included in these numbers, and a $500,000 possibility of using LGFF capital for operating. The key thing to note here is that would provide us with a potential positive position of $1.7 million, but the key thing to understand is that a balanced budget isn't necessarily the goal. We are in a maximum debt position. We have no money in reserves and unrestricted surplus, and so looking at a potential positive position like this would essentially put us in a position to create what we would call a long-term financial plan. That we would never recommend in the current situation that Gibbons is in that we reduce taxes, but we also understand we cannot raise taxes to solve this issue in an urgent way. Next slide, please, Bucky. So we have a number of recommendations, and these are in basically what we consider the 4 big areas of service for the town of Gibbons. And now I want to make sure that I state this tonight. We're not necessarily looking for line-by-line debate tonight on these issues, but we are looking for overall council direction to say, you know, is there anything that would be hands-off, and would you be okay with us taking the recommendations that we're going to be showing you tonight and building basically a recommended budget that would essentially be a significant correction budget and a significant service level decrease? We are looking at things in recreation. We've costed out the gym closure, which would be about $57,000. We've looked at shutting down the arena over the summertime, and I will say this, an arena being open for the summer months in a town of this size is not normal. I've been in a number of municipalities where it's typical to shut down the arena in the summertime. So we would be looking at the possibility of shutting that down and rededicating the staff to parks. We'd be looking at the possibility of shutting down curling and the possibility of a recreation and parks restructure, which would have basically would require an organizational review and a significant change in basically service levels and possibly staffing positions. The second level of service reductions that we'd be asking council to consider is community services and FCSS, and we'd be looking at the possibility of FCSS base reduction, which would include a number of things that we do. Basically we have summer programs, we have basically certain programs that we consider are kind of the nice to haves, nothing that would be applicable to seniors busing, nothing in relationship to the youth program, but some of the things that would be what I consider unconventional for FCSS. Something that's very important, I think, for the public to be aware of is that from a family and community services perspective, and Jody Brown is actually the expert and she may want to speak to this, but what we have is basically what's considered an 80-20 split. So the province gives us a grant of about $80,000, and we're expected to top that up by about 20%, meaning that the spend is normally about $100,000 for a municipality of our size for family and community services. We currently spend, I believe, almost well over $300,000 on FCSS services, which again is something that is enjoyed by our public, but it's also, again, very unconventional for a municipality of this size, and it's quite costly. And so we would be looking at a significant resizing and a significant change in the types of services that we've presented in FCSS. So we'd be looking at the possibility of restructuring, elimination of Communities in Bloom, and again, the entire restructuring of services. And when you look at the two numbers there, you see the 51, you see the 121. There are two options that we'd be looking at. One is more extreme than the other, and again, we would ask, because again, we have to be sensitive about labor and the effect on positions. We would ask council to basically, if you have any questions about that, we want to talk about that probably in closed session. Next slide, please. The next area of reduction that we'd be looking at is in public works. We found, again, opportunity for possible road maintenance reductions, and this would be contracted services, things like line painting, certain maintenance things that we conduct. I have to stress this, that in no way would this affect. We were very careful to make sure that we didn't do anything that would basically cause any risk to our assets themselves. So no degradation of our capital assets, because again, certain maintenance is something that you must do and should do. This is more of the aesthetic type of things that are done in public works from a maintenance perspective, and we're looking at the possibility of reducing that. Vehicle maintenance reductions is something that we could look at. I will say that the maintenance on vehicles, again, the cost, were not abnormal, but they were, in our opinion, somewhat high. And so we would be looking at, again, a possibility of reducing some of the maintenance that we have on our vehicles. And again, I can't stress this enough. In cases where we have, significant issues with vehicles in terms of must repair to maintain services, we would, but we would possibly look at reducing basically kind of that preventive maintenance that we typically normally do in a town of this size. Water meter replacements, again, something that we do on a proactive basis. Most municipalities do. We would replace them on a broken a proactive opportunity review instead of like proactively replacing meters that maybe don't need to be replaced, and so that could save us $40,000. We would look at possibly reducing our weed spraying, and again, public works restructuring strategies, which again is a basic overhaul of the way that we currently deliver services with current staffing complement. And so those are the things that are open for opportunity for discussion with council. Finally, we have protections and governance, and so we would look at the possibility of reducing our bylaw contract. We would look at the possibility of fire services regionalization. Now, one of the key things here is I was for a time the CEO of the town of Redwater, and we have an involvement in the town of Blondecourt. And just for basically the public's awareness, I think the contract, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, for fire services in Redwater for regionalized service is about $65,000 a year. Okay, it's closer to $50,000 a year, and we currently spend nearly $400,000 for our fire department. So it's a significant difference. Now, the one thing is that Redwater does maintain the building or the fire hall, and so it's an additional cost of about, I think, $40,000 if I'm not correct, Ryan, let me know. But again, we'd be looking at significant savings here of possibly $300,000. It is normal for municipalities to regionalize fire. It's a best practice model. In our opinion, there wouldn't be a significant decrease, if any decrease at all, in relationship to service levels. And so I think that's very important for the public to be aware. There would still be a fire department that would make fire calls. Again, in my opinion, service levels would not be decreased, simply our costs would decrease significantly. So it's something we have to take a look at. We have reduced this to be somewhat conservative because again, it would require negotiation with Sturgeon County, and there would be also the possibility of a transfer of assets, and those are things that we're not prepared to discuss today because again, it's going to take a little bit more work and it requires negotiation and acceptance from the county. But this is something that we would like to move forward with. Council restructure is something that we could look at, and again, this is more based on attrition. Some councils are 5 instead of 7. This would be based more on attrition, and it'd be a longer term view if we wanted to entertain this, but again, it's up to council. And then the sale restructure. One of the key things I want to make sure is very, very clear. When we came on, I was clear with council that, in my opinion, with the heavy lifting that we had to do with negotiation with the province and with the analysis that was required and the work that was needed to kind of get us to close to where we are today, we would want to continue with what was the current structure with an assistant CEO and a CEO position for the town of Gibbons. I will say this, I do not believe that is required in the long term. I have been a CEO in many municipalities of this size, and I've worked with municipalities of this size, and the assistant CEO position is typically is not typical, and I think it's a bit redundant. And I've had a lot of work talk with Jody and my team, and we believe that there's an opportunity for us to possibly restructure this so that there'll be about $150,000 savings almost immediately. Right now, under the contract for Bloom, you're paying for my services and for Jody's services, and that's the $35,000 a month. We would be looking at reducing that and basically more to a conventional model, and I would be providing consulting services basically ad hoc as required. And so I think this is a savings that could be possibly done right away. Next slide, Buffy, please. So, to summarize, and again, I want to get through this fairly quickly to be, again, fair for time. What we'll be looking at, quite frankly, is a complete organizational realignment. Though, again, there's numbers there, and it speaks to basically staffing realignment. This is a complete organizational restructure, which we are very prepared and capable of preparing for you within this budget. And That would include basically the staffing complement. We would complete the budget, and we would give you basically a long-term financial plan that would be tied to this. So we would be reducing duplication of positions that we think are redundant. We would again provide a leaner structure with clearer accountability, and in our opinion, a more efficient way of delivering services. I can't stress enough, though, that this would result in a balanced budget, but does not necessarily achieve the same level of services. There's definitely going to be an impact on services, but in our opinion, your services are quite high for a municipality of this size. And so this would be kind of a resizing and basically creating a situation and a structure that is more aligned with the municipality of this size and basically the financial capacity that you have. The thing that I can't stress enough, though, is that if we can, take on all of these reductions and we have a result of basically a cash flow position that is positive, we can start possibly reducing debt. We can start rebuilding reserves, and again, we would still be able to protect our municipal autonomy by not dissolving. And again, we knew that would be difficult decisions to get to this point, but if we want to maintain that, we believe that with the work that we've done, we can develop a long-term financial plan that will get you into a good place in time. But even with the work that we have above here, we'd still be looking at probably a good 5 to 10 years before you'd hit what we can consider a conventional model for a good practice municipality from a financial perspective. But it is possible.
If I could just, regarding the numbers specifically on the options, I did everything we possibly could to try and minimize duplication, but there is overlap in some of the options. So for example, if you take one of the options or you take two of the options and there's some overlap in there, it won't be the full dollar amount. There's no way to fully eliminate and segregate each one, so there might be some changes that result or some duplication that we wouldn't see that full dollar amount of savings, so it would be just based on the case by case, and then we'd have to reevaluate from there.
Dependent on the options that you would choose and let us implement. Next slide, please. So the risks of inaction, if we don't do anything, is again continued deficits and reserve depletion. We have no reserves. We can't continue the way that we're going. We would have to take on additional debt, and as you're aware, and we've stated in this council chambers before, and again, council wants to be completely transparent with the public. We've been turned down by financial institutions in relationship to taking on additional operating debt. And I can't stress enough, I wouldn't recommend it anyway. I was, quite frankly, a little bit sick to my stomach thinking that I'm going to recommend the same thing that got us in trouble. So I think, we have to keep that in mind. This would result, again, in greater external oversight, meaning that we're now under the oversight of an official administrator. And again, he's been great with us. But again, if we continue with the path that we are on, we would have to continue that. And again, that takes away basically the authority of council. Council direction required. We want to hear your thoughts on the service level options that we presented. We know that they're hard. We want to get your thoughts on organizational restructuring if we have the okay to begin that process. And we want to talk about the integration of the 2026 budget, and again, talk about the alignment with the long-term financial plan. And this is the key thing that I have to stress, that this is just the beginning. Next slide, please. This is basically just the beginning. I mean, this does not solve the problem. I can't stress enough. If we can implement all of these, service level reductions and organizational restructure and get to a cash positive position, we are in a position of having to pay down significant operating debt. I think nearly $6 million. We have no reserves in place, so we have to look at rebuilding those. And so we would still be in a situation of caution for a number of years. But I do believe we can get into a positive position fairly quickly if we implement this. We're also looking at discussions with Sturgeon County, looking at road negotiations with Alberta Transportation in terms of the road works that were done on the Harlan Station works. So there's still other opportunities, but again, we do have to stress that we have to come up with our own solutions, and so that's what we're doing here. This would tie into a long-term financial plan. Our work would include, if council okays us to do this work, is to balance your budget and then integrate this into a long-term financial plan. That's the kind of work that we would actually do with Harold. We talked with him about this as well. And again, just to leave off with this is a 5 to 10 year plan. So this is not something that's a quick fix. This is just simply, again, a beginning, and I think a necessary change that we have to make in short order. Slide, So with that, if everybody can read that, you probably can't. I provided I apologize. This was meant to go into the report. We will make sure that this detail is put on the website for the public consumption so they're aware, but this is the detail of the options that we've presented in the PowerPoint, and so nothing that you haven't seen already. So with that, do you have any additional comments, Ryan? I will pick up the questions.
Questions? No questions?
No, I'm good, I'll go.
Okay.
I was gonna say, no questions.
So, just for I've got a lot of specific questions, but I just want first a couple of clarity questions.
Yep.
So when we're talking about bringing forth a balanced budget, we're looking at a 5 to 10 year recovery. This is a 5 to 10 year recovery with no intervention from the county, and in essence, deeming ourselves to be financially viable without intervention from the county. The intervention from the county in this particular budget is simply for fire services, and it's not even with fire services. Fire services is in addition to.
That's correct.
Question.
Yeah. So we're assuming in our initial talks to the county, we believe that they believe in the regionalization model. So we've included that with this, but this does not include any additional discussion with the county in terms of any other support that we've received from them at this time. This is basically what we want to put together is basically a self-correction model so that we can basically get control of our own future. But again, with very difficult decisions to be made.
And the assets for fire services not included here. This is just the reduction of the actual annual expense for fire service.
Through Mr. Mayor, a question came up when we presented to the county council. They questioned whether that was a conventional model, the transfer of fire assets. We have confirmed that it is, but it will require negotiation. And a lot of the assets that we have, like for example, the new fire truck, is an adventured fire asset, so it's not something that we could use the money for. We have to pay down the debt. So we would have to take a look at all the fire assets, determine basically what has any value, if any at all, and then determine, how we would transfer those assets to the county. And again, it would be a negotiation. It's an opportunity, but we don't want to put any opportunities in front of here that we can't control at this time.
Sorry, I can't hear that.
Mine doesn't turn on either.
I just want to be clear for myself, for everyone here. These things are all up for discussion, negotiating. Like, this is not a all or not. Like, we can go through each item, say, if something says, okay, close this, we can say, okay, well, what does it look like if we do this much or do that, or, right? Like, we can.
Through Mr. Mayor, the thing that we're looking for tonight is basically to kind of be what I would call unleashed on creating a budget for you that would be balanced. We don't have the authority to change service levels, and so this is what we're saying now is to get to a positive situation from a financial perspective. We have to look at service levels. So what we'd ask tonight is that council, if there's any low-hanging fruit, you say absolutely not. We'd like to hear that. If there's things they say, okay, well, we don't want to see it, then our job is then to build the budget. And then we come back and we present the budget to you and we will show you what those impacts would be. And if at that time you don't agree with them, then that's when you would have debate and discussion. Again, we're going to set up some council meetings that would be for budget only. And then at that time we would talk about every service level impact and we would have a balanced budget recommendation. Brian?
Yeah, no, 100%. The big thing with this is every one of these scenarios is an option, but not necessarily something that has to be taken. So what we need is direction on which to proceed with in order to build the budget document, and then just go from there, basically. So everything's open for discussion. Everything is an option to be tabled, and there's different levels. We can also make adjustments within the options if certain things want to be kept. That again, there's a lot of work to be done still. This is just the overarching start of it.
So basically what you guys have done up there now, scenario is, we say, you know what, you've done there, I know it's a deep cut, but we're gonna take it. What's the tax increase? Is it 1% from what I read on that?
So what we would recommend, again, we think would be, so what we thought would be reasonable would be to have a tax increase that would be the average of the region. We would not, I would never, by the way, recommend a zero tax dollar increase at any time because there's inflation, there's costs. But we also have heard council's direction and very strong advocacy for the residents, and so we'd be looking at a tax increase no higher than any other regional tax increase that would be conventional. Probably 3% is what our guess is at this time. We're looking at a possibility of a 3% utility increase, but we would be looking at what other municipalities are increasing theirs with. But again, we're looking at a significant service level cuts to get to that.
Right, exactly. And I guess my message was, and this might help Travis on the end down there, is so based on what's presented there, the tax rate is X, and everything we choose that we say, hey, we want to keep this, we want to keep that, that affects the tax to Y.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, if every option was taken and we removed the duplication, if you guys took every single option here, we would end up with, in theory, a surplus budget that we would use to enhance the debt reduction at that point, right? So there's two phases to it, right? Whatever we do to bring the deficit down, we still need to build in strategies around debt reduction moving forward.
If I may, just to clarify, and I said this in the first slide, if we were able to say take everything, and again, Ryan said there's duplication, but say if we were able to get to a $1.5 million surplus position, I'd recommend to council still a tax increase, and we move that money into reserves and to debt buy down so that we can slowly start building a financial plan. Because there's three key things that we have to do with our budget and our plan: balance the budget, lower debt, and increase our unrestricted, restricted surplus so we have reserves in place. So, because that's the goal to get us to what I consider a healthy financial situation. So even with the surplus, we have to use that money to help support our long-term viability.
Okay, thanks. I think Councilor Brack?
Just some clarity, if you can. For the FCSS to give us a basic service reduction, I understand that we're over-serviced in some aspect, if you want to look at it that way. What would the average citizen see as a difference? What's from a community member using these services, what's their impact for them gonna be?
Jody, would you like to speak to this? You're our expert in this area.
Okay, can everybody hear me? I'm not used to microphones, so. I think that by reducing in that area, I don't think you would see a huge impact. I think we would still be able to maintain the information and referral program, which is really key. And when I present the administrative report, you'll see a lot of evidence about how important that is for the community and providing those supports. But I think it would still be possible within the reductions that are presented there. Just from my experience in working with FCSS over the years, I think that one thing FCSS does extremely well, those staff do, is collaborating with their partners across the region. They collaborate with other human service agencies, nonprofit organizations, to make things happen with less dollars. And so I think that would be one of the areas where we could look at saving, is really looking into those partnerships and collaboration opportunities to help reduce overall costs, but still maintain those events and programs that are really important. I wouldn't say we may not be able to maintain all of them this year, but we would certainly be looking at what we could do using those types of supports from the community. The other thought with that as well is, I know the youth center is very important to the community, and again, when I'm presenting the administrative report, there's some pretty impressive statistics from the youth center that have come forward as part of the report this evening. And so that would also include maintaining that program as best as we can. Might there be some slight reductions in terms of hours or days where the program is offered. We haven't gone that far into that detail yet. But we do know that's really important, and we have been looking at sponsorship for that program as well. And one thing I can speak to with community services is when you are looking for sponsorship and donations, it's about families, it's about seniors and children and youth, and often companies and organizations are very apt to come forward with donations for those type of support services. So even though you're looking at some reductions in that area, I think that we could work very hard with the skill set that FCSS folks have in trying to maintain as much of the programs you have now, just at a lower cost.
Councillor Longstaff?
With the FCSS, or with any of these cutbacks, a few years ago we used to have a community services board which was made up of volunteers, and my understanding is previous administration kind of quashed that. Would that be something that might be helpful again with these reductions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Longstaff and all council, I would highly recommend you reconsider bringing that board back. They are a typical piece of community services programs, particularly in small towns, and they do provide a lot of public engagement and volunteer support for those community programs. So I would definitely, programs at events. So I would definitely recommend that's something council considers, and you would have to reestablish that with a new community services advisory board bylaw, and then move forward with recruitment and advertising. And they are usually volunteer based, so it isn't a cost.
Thank you. Yeah, I've actually spoken to a couple of the former members from that board, so I'll keep talking to them and bring that up with the rest of council after.
Councillor St. Germain?
It's my understanding that the food bank and the youth group and a few of our other FCSS services are used by other communities. Is that a possibility too, to share some of these costs with communities that are using them?
Mr. Mayor, I've actually talked. Yeah, okay. I've had conversations with Jody Brown about this. She was the sale of the town of Bonaccord for some time. And we've done some statistical work with the team over at FCSS, and there was significant use by our neighbors. And I think Jody has mentioned to me before that there was offers of financial support from other municipalities that was turned down. We are no longer turning down any opportunities for financial support. We're actually right now we had a call from a resident also looking at the possibility of industry support. So we are right now looking at every opportunity that we have, including support with our regional partners for any type of funding that we can have. It's a fantastic resource, we recognize that, and we want to maintain it to the best level that we can under the current financial resources that we have, but we're consistently looking for more. I will say this, just for everybody to use, that Jody told me, she was my FCSS director when I was a CEO in Bruderheim almost 20 years ago, and she said, Tim, if you even look at FCSS, I will throw my body down in front of the door, I think she said. So I'm kind of told I can't really look at it, so she's fighting for it very much.
Oh, Councillor Bragg?
In regards to town vehicles and I guess maintenance equipment stuff, my understanding is that every year they just traded in for new instead of maintaining it themselves. Is that something that's being looked at to save money instead of having new, just kind of?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not necessarily aware of the long history of the way that they've handled vehicle replacements and whatnot here. But I will say this, on a go-forward basis, our recommendations is going to be that we're going to have to do everything we can to maintain the vehicles we have in the cheapest way possible. I've had some experience with this, and sometimes the vehicles, trucks, things like that can last a lot longer than we think. We're going to have to deal with those types of things, to be quite frank, on a go-forward basis. And so this budget, what we're looking for is cutting it back as much as we can without any risk to the town in terms of services and certainly safety.
Councillor St. Germain?
I'm just wondering if part of this budget, or if it even ties in, do we have a full inventory or accounting of what we own, what we don't? Could we possibly get rid of some stuff that we're not using, not needing? I think there's a few electric vehicles that we may not need.
Here, Mr. Mayor, one of the strategies that we identified to council in a longer strategic document that we presented to yourselves and in the public, it is certainly something we haven't gotten to yet, but we do have a list of all the assets I've asked for it. Tara's been helping with that in terms of finding our insurance costs on things and everything else. And we are going to be asking about redundancy and if there's vehicles we can get rid of. Now, that said, is there money there? It depends, right? So sometimes used vehicles don't have a lot of value on occasion, but yellow steel does. You know, so big equipment that maybe isn't utilized is something that we're seriously considering in terms of selling, including you know, some of our buildings, in terms of maybe the fire hall as well, depending on how our negotiations goes with the county. So definitely something that we're going to be looking at.
I guess my thought process was, you know, we're paying maintenance insurance on those vehicles, and if we're not utilizing them, and then they're losing value the longer we hold on to them. That was just kind of my thought process.
One of the key things that's probably important to note is that if we get council's okay to complete basically an organizational review and a complete restructure, it may change the need for the vehicles that we have as well as we downsize certain areas. And if that's the case, then we certainly will be looking at selling off certain assets and replenishing our reserves with the sales of those assets.
I guess the elephant in the room, I don't see the back truck on there.
Just for the public's awareness, we've ordered a second one. I'm just Jody, I think just as recently as today, talked to me about we're looking at additional quotes and looking at much cheaper alternatives for the back truck. So stay tuned. We are going to make sure that there's a change in this budget in relationship to the back truck.
Excellent. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring that up. You got something?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No,
Go ahead, Robert.
please.
Just a question in regards to, let's say this package here is implemented. Any implications for down the line next year? Can it be revised? Let's say one area was too harsh a cutback or was not enough, or you know, kind of thing. So it could be reworked, right?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's very important to note, as I mentioned before, service levels are basically the policy of council. And so because we're in such a dire situation, in a situation where we have to move very quickly, we are going to be making adjustments that absolutely we would have time to see how they flush out. And every year we come back and ask council how you feel about these service levels. If our financial situation improves, we can always make changes. And if things affect the public in a very adverse way, we can make changes even during the year if we have to. And I've managed a lot of budgets in my time. And so we are looking at making some severe cuts, but we're cognizant that this will make it, result in some changes in service levels, and we'll be very cognizant of change and open to council's want for change in future budgets as well.
Okay, you have 10 minutes.
Won't need 10 minutes. Where are we at in looking at sort of those services? We'll just throw curling out there. You shut curling down, you're not bringing curling back. That's just my opinion. But so we're.
No, I know. I'm sorry,
Buffy. Where are we looking at those services that there's not a really big delta between the revenue stream and the cost, and looking at being able to increase the cost, the revenue drivers to offset the cost. So be it curling, be it increasing fees at the gym, so on and so forth, in order to maintain those services. Where and if you haven't even gotten to that place yet, I'm okay with that answer as well.
The big one, and where we had initially talked around the curling club, was there's a lot of, I don't want to say redundancy in salary, but we can't necessarily eliminate said salary. So the difference in the curling club is negligible when it comes down to it, realistically. So that one, we talked about it, we had to present it. I don't recommend that one is undertaken because it's not a significant enough savings, and it is a service that is viable and something that's, you know, utilized quite heavily. So that's, again, it's one we've talked about. I don't recommend it. I think that's an easy strike off if that's council's direction. In regards to the gym, for example, we're talking much more dollars at that point, right? So that's, again, another service level reduction that would result. Is it something that has to be long-term? No. Is it something we could do in a short-term period, say for 2 or 3 years, and then look at reintroducing it once we've got, you know, more balance built into the budget? Absolutely. That's something we could do.
Best of luck.
It was alluded to earlier, but going back to FCCS, the seniors bus, that was completely off the table.
We've heard loud and clear from council and the public that one's hands off. We've maintained it in this budget. It's not a part of the service level reductions.
Jody? Go ahead.
Microphone.
Turn
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I always forget that part. I have a soft voice, so I need the mic too. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the seniors bus program in the Sturgeon region has gone back a few years and was initially the conceptualized, and I think there was actually an event here at the Cultural Center quite a few years back about a regional seniors bus program. So I think that one of the biggest challenges for that at the time was not having a bus, and now you have a bus. So I think getting back to another question that somebody mentioned earlier about the possibility of cost share, is maybe that's something we can revisit in the next 6 months within the region to look at how we could utilize or help support some of our neighbors while also sharing some of the costs for delivering that service. So I think that's something that we'll start looking at and revisiting with the FCSS programs in the region. I do know that there are other programs. I know Bonaccord was mentioned when I was there. We did rent the seniors bus here for programs for our community. So I'm sure that there might be some opportunity for cost share.
Yep. You said best last, so we left you for last.
Oh, you said best for last. That's not what I heard, actually. I apologize for what I thought of you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. I moved my tab. The split. Oh, where did it go? Brian, help me. Increased split rate for commercial. Just give me a definition of what that actually, forgive my ignorance.
No problem at all. So in Alberta, we have what's called, under the Municipal Government Act, a split mill rate. So you can charge commercial business 5 times more for the same assessment level that you can charge for a $100,000 business. You can charge up to 5 times more for business than you can charge for residential property. The average in Alberta is 2 to 1. And right now you are slightly below the average and you're slightly below the regional average. And so there's an opportunity, it's not necessarily a popular one usually with councils, but it is an opportunity to increase that split rate where you would generate additional taxation dollars from the business community in Gibbons, and which would result in additional tax dollars and would get us to where we're probably more at the average of the region than below the average of the region. So.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I recall us talking about that before and what that difference is. It hasn't been brought into the calculation just because you're not testing it at this point in time, or you haven't had an opportunity to calculate it at this point in time.
Yeah, exactly that. Realistically, what we would need to do is get the revised assessment figures, figure out what the mill rate difference we would want to propose is, and then we could, tier it, show a couple different levels, say a 2 mil increase, a 3 mil increase, a 4 mil increase. Again, just thresholds. We would identify them and bring that as potential opportunities at that point. So again, it's more just testing the appetite for it ahead of proposing it and including it in the budget.
I'll stop. You go right ahead.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, there was there's taxation stuff, and it slipped me now, that came up in the legislative compliance review in regards to, the differential taxes for industrial. Is that kind of factored in, or no, we haven't got that far, like, I'm not trying to put pressure on you, I know much.
Through Mr. Mayor, it's not a problem at all, Councillor St. Germain. I think, I've read the compliance review, I don't recall anything specific to that. I can tell you now that looking at the tax mill rates and whatnot, I'm an expert in this, there is nothing unconventional about our current mill rate. I don't see anything that would be against governance. We're slightly below the average, and maybe just for the public's awareness and council's awareness, the reason why the rationale is that business can pay more, there's a few rationales. One is that they generate income by being in our committee, but businesses also get to write off their taxes, where individuals don't. And so essentially, effectively, when they pay 2 to 1, they actually pay about the same as an average residential homeowner, and so that's part of the rationale, is that it's a write-off for business.
Okay, do we have any further questions? We're gonna get into this much deeper at future meetings.
It's just the beginning.
Yeah, just the beginning, yeah, exactly. So we need 2 motions, I guess. The first one is that council receive the 2026 service level reduction and organizational adjustment scenarios as presented. Councillor Smolowitz?
I so move, we just read it.
Any further questions? All those in favor? So carried. The second motion, that council direct administration to incorporate council feedback into the presentation of the draft for the 2026 operating budget and long-term financial plan for further council consideration. Councillor Longstaff.
I'll go ahead and make that motion.
Any questions? All in favor? So carried. Let's go down to 12.1. Administration report to be circulated at the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I can do that. There, now it's on, I think.
Yeah, just gotta push it once.
Yeah, I always forget to turn it on and watch for the little blue light.
No problem, thank you.
So this report unfortunately wasn't ready in time to go out with the agenda package on Friday. So we did circulate it through to council today. And we will have it available on the website for any of the public that are interested in reading it or reviewing it as of tomorrow. So as it wasn't included in the package though, I can go through it very quickly. And if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. If I can't answer them today, we certainly can get an answer out to council following the meeting. So first off, we have the Gibbons Family Resource Center update. So the Voices of Albertans with Disabilities has been providing in-person support at the GFRC every 2 weeks since November. They assist individuals with various applications that will help for various different needs. So assured income for the severely handicapped program, otherwise known as AISH, Canada Disability Benefit, Disability Tax Credit, and other related programs. This one-on-one support helps ensure community members receive the benefits and services they need, and upcoming visits are March 5th and March 19th. I hope I'm not going too quickly. Let me know if I'm reading too quickly. The next thing we have is the Primary Care Network. So this is a partnership with the Community Services Department with the Primary Care Network to offer a registered chronic pain workshop in Gibbons. And so again, that's happening in March. And there's some information included in the report on what that covers. So of course, reach out to us if anyone's interested on more information on that workshop. There's also a behavioral health consultant from the Primary Care Network that continues to provide support at the GFRC every Tuesday, ensuring consistent access to wellness services close to home. And the GFRC is also proud to offer a formal wear program for graduates, providing free access to grad dresses and suits. All items have been generously donated by community members, and we are very grateful for the continued support that helps make graduation accessible for everyone. So if anyone is interested in donating to that program, again, certainly reach out to the GFRC. The youth center updates. So for 2025, total attendance, 4,127 visits. 22% of visits were from out of town youth, and the center operated over capacity 58% of the days. So those are some pretty impressive statistics that I'm happy to share. For January 2026, total attendance 382 visits, 34% were out of town youth, open 19 days, closed 3 days. I don't have any more information on those dates. Over capacity 58% of operating days, 8 volunteers contributed a total of 16 hours. February 2026, the free events included pottery, cosmic radiance, line dancing, professional day event activity in partnership with the Gibbons Public Library, the Alberta Winter Walk Day, snacks from Circle K, and Muffin Mondays from Tim Hortons. Coming in 2026, they have an International Women's Day event, another professional development day event for children and youth with the Gibbons Public Library, babysitting course. I really have to know what Cosmic Radiance is. I don't know what that is, so I'll have to ask. But that's being offered again.
It's a local business, it's a gaming store.
Oh,
and
okay.
I believe they have coffee and it's great.
Cool. Fun. Okay. Again, snacks from Circle K and Muffin Mondays from Tim Hortons. And interesting, they did a survey recently, and these are the results. The survey was, what does the youth center mean to you? 60% say it is their safe place where they feel welcomed, not judged, and free to be themselves. 40% say it is a fun place to spend time with friends and play games, and 12% say it's a place where they can be creative and learn new skills. So moving on from that, corporate services 2026 budget cleanup to build a baseline budget in preparation for scenarios. Work on service scenarios for council review, which we've done tonight, and year-end module closing and reconciliations. And I'll just ask if Brian has anything further.
Sure, yeah, I'll just add in, obviously the focus right now is budget for us, so vast majority of the items are on that. We'll move into some municipal affairs reporting that we have to do on a monthly basis, and then the focus after that shifts over to the audit. So that's what the purpose of our year-end closures and reconciliations is, and you'll start to see more audit items coming up once we get closer to completing the audit or doing the work to complete it.
Okay, and moving on to Public Works. So I just have 3 highlights here. Snow removal. I saw some more snow coming down again today, so that will keep that crew very busy. Water meter changeouts as appointments are made and time permits, and equipment maintenance on Mondays as required. I will mention that we have recently put out a post to the community asking residents for feedback on snow removal as we look at the snow removal policy and overall operations and any improvements that can be made. So for residents that are interested in that, you're able to reach out directly to Tim or myself, or even call the town office if that's easier, to give us your feedback on that while we move through that engagement process. Planning and development, we don't have any updates at this time. Fire department, so for county calls there were 22, town calls there were 33, and there's a total membership of 23. I'm assuming that means 23 firefighters. The project updates, so for Memorial Park, the washroom facility has been delivered and installed, and for the Heartland Station, there is 1 vacancy at that commercial development at this time. And that concludes the report.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions for her?
Go ahead.
Seeing none, can I get a motion that we accept the staff presentations information? Councilor Curry.
I'll make that motion.
All those in favor? So carried. Mr. Hamel.
Through Mr. Mayor, my apologies, but when we canceled 7.2 and replaced it with 7.3, unfortunately, the motions that were read after we finished our presentation were off 7.2. So again, Tara and Buffy pointed this out to me, and so if we could just go back and redo the motions off of 7.3, they're more appropriate for us basically beginning the implementation of the budget. Sorry about that.
Should be right out.
Okay, so I believe we need to make a motion to rescind those first two, if I'm not correct.
Yeah.
So, can I get a motion to rescind the first one? First motion, that was, there you go. First motion, rescind the first motion, the council receive the 2026 service level reduction and organizational adjustment scenarios as presented. Who made that motion? You recall?
Councillor Simonowitz.
Yeah. Rescind that? Okay. All those in favor of rescinding that motion? So carried. And then the second motion, that council direct administration to incorporate the council feedback into the preparation of the drafted 2026 operating budget and long-term financial plan. I believe that was you.
Yeah, I'll move to rescind my motion.
All those in favor of rescinding that motion? So carried. Alrighty. Can I get a motion that council receive the 2026 service level adjustment and organizational realignment report as presented? Council Simonowitz?
Yeah, so
Okay. All those in favor? So carried. Okay. Can I get a motion that council provide direction to administration regarding the service level options identified? Anybody?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
And number 3, that council direct administration to incorporate council's direction into the draft 2026 operating budget and long-term financial plan for further consideration.
I'll make that motion.
All those in favor? So carried.
Through Mr. Mayor, I guess the one clarification we would like to make sure that we get is that we have gotten clear direction from council to implement and build scenarios on the service level adjustments that we recommend this evening. We just want to make sure that we've got clear direction in our motion in relationship to that, please.
That is correct, yep, you betcha. It's been started, we're going the right way.
In the minutes, but you betcha, please.
Yes, yes, that is correct, and I think number 2 kind of covers that, is that council provide direction to administration regarding their service level option, and the direction is, you are moving in the correct direction.
Thank you, that's the,
Okay.
thank you. If I may, we have an opportunity because again, the official administrator is here with us this evening. I will say this, a lot of the work that we have done on this was also including a lot of the advice that Harold's provided us and some collaboration that we've had with him. I'd really like to welcome his comments and hear what his thoughts are on the work that we've done thus far and how this evening's meetings went.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This was a good meeting for me to attend in person. I think all of us in this room, including the public, are quite aware of the challenges that face council, and the start is today. And I commend administration in what they brought forward. Some of them are more difficult than others, and there will be, as Tim has mentioned, opportunity to further chat about them. Meeting with Tim and Jody earlier this afternoon, I asked Tim, when is the budget going to be presented? And he said in a couple of weeks, and I cautioned him on that. I feel that it's very important that a budget is presented as soon as possible, and that expenditures that are considered that they're going to need to be made fairly soon, so that the bottom line at the end of 2026 is reasonable. But also, I'm a firm believer that even more so for the situation that the town of Gibbons is in, that the budget document, and I've always believed that the budget is not just a budget of numbers. It's a document that's a planning document. It's a document that's a management document. It's a document that's a communication document. And I feel for the benefit of council, for the benefit of other stakeholders like municipal affairs, the county, and also for the residents, is that the budget be including narrative as to what is and what will be, and so that there's a good understanding, as what has been presented in summary this evening, a good understanding of what is no longer going to be and what the cost implications are and so on. And so that's my recommendation to the administration, is that now it's time to take all the recommendations or the suggestions and put meat to the bone, so to speak, in identifying what council is going to end up approving at the end of the day. So again, I'm glad I attended here in person. I appreciate and commend what has been done, and there's still work ahead, but this is a real good start.
Excellent, thanks for that. Alrighty, committee reports. Who wants to start us off? Councillor St. Germain, I see you reading for your book.
I don't have the exact dates because my phone is charging, but we had a meeting with MLA Dale Nally.
Friday the 13th.
13th. Some of these are going to be repeated by other councillors, so we'll just go with their dates. We had a minister with Minister Williams on the 20th. Thank you. Also attended by Dale Nally and staff members, and Councillor Barak and I, which I believe may have been on the 20th, did reading at the library, and we got to do crafts with the kids.
Thank you. Councillor Longstaff.
For committee reports, yesterday we had our first Sturgeon Regional Emergency Management Advisory Committee meeting. And I'll say that 5 times fast. Right now we meet twice a year, and at this one we elected our new chair for this year, which was the same as the chair last year, which was Councillor Tim Larson from Bonnecourt. Basically, we met all the other councils, and we had a presentation by the Sturgeon Fire Chief Chad Moore, and there was a lot of discussion with the Redwater fires last year, and a lot of after-action reports of stuff that we're going to be looking at to hopefully make things easier the next time should something like that happen within Sturgeon County. Aside from that, like Councillor St. Germain, I attended the meeting with MLA Dale Nally on the 13th and our Minister of Municipal Affairs on the 20th.
As with the rest of council, meeting with MLA Dale Nally on the 13th of February, interview with Global News on the same date, meeting with the Minister of Municipal Affairs Williams on the 20th of February, interview with CTV News on the 23rd of February, and attended the town hall for firearms owners with MLA Nally and the Minister of Justice, Mickey Avery, at the Gibbons Cultural Center last evening.
Thank you.
Councillor Curry.
I unfortunately wasn't able to make the meeting with Dale Nally on the 13th, but I was at the Municipal Affairs meeting on the 20th.
Councillor Barak, you ready?
On February 13th, did the meeting with MLA Dale Nally. Also on the 13th was the Global News interview. On the 19th, along with Councillor St. Germain, the story time with council at the library with mom and kids, and did some crafts. And then the 20th, we did the meeting with Minister Dan Williams, as well as MLA Dale Nally and other guests. And then on the 22nd was the interview with the Edmonton Journal.
Councillor Smonowitz.
I attended the same meetings as my colleagues here with Ministers Nally and Williams and Global News interview. The two main committees that I'm on is the Rose Ridge Landfill Commission, and our illustrious mayor and I attended that on February the 12th. Rose Ridge is working on their 10-year planning session. They're looking at either creating more cells at the site or transporting the landfill by truck to further destinations, other communities that's willing to take it. So that's up in the air, and they're also looking at the rates for landfill. Attended the Water Commission on the February the 23rd. There again, monthly meetings are fairly lengthy. We continue to have some issues here. I think I mentioned about the pipe repair that needed to be done. Well, they didn't find the leak when they looked for it, which is kind of good news, but the equipment still tells them that there's a leak, so we don't know exactly where. It's in a valley, it's in a gully, and it's like a V-shaped type of piping. The leak, what they were going to repair for $400,000 was just the bottom of the V. So now we're looking at replacing the whole V. That's going to be about $1.2 million, and we're gonna hear back from our administration there whether that's something to look forward to. Everybody's concerned. We don't want a Calgary situation, because if things blow, we're down to about 30% water usage in town and the surrounding communities. So that's it, and I'll keep you updated on that.
Excellent, thank you. So for me, much the same as the rest, I joined Councillor Simonowitz at the Rose Ridge, and he was talking about some of their options. They're talking a possibility of going to the transfer station, much the way Edmonton does it now, where when you go to the dump, you go pull into the building and they transfer it to a truck, and then they truck it out to the dump site somewhere. Because the current site right now, by the end of 2026, they'll be at their height limit. They won't be able to go any higher. So, but they do have other cells. Should they choose to go that way, they can start a pile somewhere else on site. So, the 13th met with Dale Nally, Global News interview that day. The 19th, Sturgeon Regional Partnership meeting, and that's with the mayors of the area, all the municipalities, as well as their CAOs. We all meet a couple of times a year. The 20th, met with Municipal Affairs. 23rd, I joined Darren, Councillor Longstaff, at the Sturgeon Regional Emergency Management Advisory Committee. And that is it. I can't remember if I need a motion to accept that.
Yes.
Can I get a motion to accept the report, committee reports as information?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
All those in favor? So carried. And I believe that's it before we go back into closed session. So I'll call a recess at 21:35. 10 minutes. Thanks, folks.
Good job, guys.
we're just gonna make a motion to go to closed session, right? So-
And to extend.
And to extend, because we're done, supposed to be done at 10, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Two motions. How much time do you need, an hour?
What?
An hour to extend? Can I get a motion, it looks like we're gonna be longer than 2,200 hours. Can I get a motion that we extend by 1 hour to 2,300 hours? Councilor Longstaff?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we extend the meeting by 1 hour. We should be done by 2020.
All those in favor? So carried. And could I get a motion that we enter closed session, please? Councilor Simonowitz?
I so move that we go into closed session.
All those in favor? Okay. Okay, can I get a motion to come out of closed session, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. All those in favor? Okay, can I get a motion that we direct administration to open a dialogue to discuss the school site with a possible meeting with the school board?
I'll make that motion.
All those in favor? So carried. And seeing no more business, 2216, I call adjournment.